I heard the panic in my mother's voice before I even picked up the phone. "Janette, honey, we need to talk about your tuition." That line, those 10 little words, took the ground right out from under me. I was standing in the tiny parking lot outside my community library in Raleigh, North Carolina, the late August heat sticking to my neck, thinking this was just another check-in call. College started in 3 days. My dorm was ready. My schedule was printed. My future felt finally, beautifully, like mine. But my mother's voice carried something else, guilt, and fear, and the kind of dread that only comes when you know you're about to destroy someone. She said, "There's been a situation." And I already knew. Some part of me already knew. Because for 20 years, one truth ruled our household like a quiet law. My sister Rachel always came first. And I was always the afterthought. If you've ever lived like that, always the backup kid, the extra chair, the "we forgot you were there" or sibling, you'll understand what I mean when I say, I felt the betrayal before she even said it. And when she did. When she said the words out loud. I swear the sky itself went still. "Your father and we had to use your tuition money for Rachel's wedding." That was the moment my story began. And honestly, if this opening hits a nerve for you, tell me where you're watching from, because no kid deserves to hear those words. My name is Janette, and if you ever visited our house growing up, you'd think everything was perfect. White porch. Hydrangeas. A mother who baked on Sundays. A father who fixed every leaky faucet himself. And a sister, Rachel, glowing like she walked straight out of a college brochure. She was 3 years older, and my parents treated her like she was carved from gold. I don't say this to be cruel. It's just true. If she sneezed, the world paused. If I got an A, they nodded and said, "Good." If she got an A, they took her for ice cream. It wasn't abuse. It wasn't violent. It was something quieter, like living in a house where someone else's portrait always hung higher on the wall. When I was 15, I once overheard my mother telling my aunt, in this soft, matter-of-fact tone. "Rachel is our future. Janette, she's steady. Quiet. She's not the one who'll shine." It was the kind of private humiliation that stays with you. Not because it's loud, but because it's whispered. But I learned to swallow things. That was my role. The steady one. The quiet one. The one who didn't ask for much. Except for one thing. College. I'd worked my butt off, taken dual enrollment classes, saved money, and earned enough merit aid at UNC Greensboro to make it real. My parents promised, they had put aside the rest. They said, "That's your college fund, sweetheart. No one will touch it." They said it enough times that I believed them. Or maybe I wanted to believe them. Then came Rachel's engagement. A ring the size of a small planet. A fiancé with expensive taste. A wedding vision that looked like a movie set. And parents who smiled like they were about to send a princess off to a throne. But I didn't know then that my dream would become the price for hers. The year before I left for college, things in my house shifted the way storms do, slow at first, then all at once. Rachel came home almost every weekend with new demands. She wanted a ballroom venue in downtown Raleigh. She wanted imported orchids from California. She wanted a videographer who shot in cinematic 4K. She wanted everything. My parents said yes to all of it. I didn't think much of it because they told her, constantly, "We have the wedding fund." They said it like they meant it. But there were small signs, little cracks, that I ignored. Once, I walked into the kitchen and heard my dad say, "We can shift some things around." Another time, my mom whispered, "It's just temporary, Janette won't mind." And then, one night, Rachel said something that knocked the air out of me. She was standing in front of the fridge in her silk robe, drinking almond milk straight from the carton, when she said, "Honestly, Mom and Dad are lucky they only had to save for one daughter's life. I mean, what does Janette even want? A laptop? Books?" I was right behind her when she said it, but she didn't know. Or she didn't care. That's when the dread started growing. A quiet seed planted deep in my stomach. A cliffhanger hung over me every day for the next year. Would they actually do it? Would they choose her over my future? I tried to tell myself no. That I was being paranoid. But sometimes, the truth sits in a room long before you're ready to see it. At Rachel's bridal shower, my aunt hugged me tight and whispered, "I hope they're still keeping something aside for you, sweetheart." My chest tightened. Why wouldn't they? She pulled away. Oh. You know how weddings can get? They get expensive. She said expensive like a warning. Like a storm cloud. That was the first time my heart started preparing for impact. And the impact came 3 days before orientation. The call came while I stood in that parking lot with my backpack slung over one shoulder. My mother cried first thin, guilty sobs, then my father took the phone. "Well," he said, clearing his throat like he was discussing a grocery list, "Rachel's wedding ended up costing more than we expected." My mind spun. "But, my fund." "We only borrowed it," he cut in, sounding irritated by my confusion. "We'll pay it back. But you'll need to delay a semester. Maybe 2. Silence. Then he added, "You can work. Save up. Build character. Build character." That's what he said. My mother chimed in, saying, Rachel's wedding was important for the whole family. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event. But college is also. It's not the same, she snapped, then softened her tone. "You're strong, Janette. You'll be fine." That's when I realized they discussed this, agreed on it, justified it, comforted themselves, and wrapped it with a bow, long before calling me. The betrayal wasn't the decision. It was how easy it seemed for them. I asked, quietly, "Does Rachel know?" Dead silence. Then my mom whispered, She knows we moved some things around." Moved. Some. Things. Translation, Rachel knew they took my fund, and she didn't say a word. My father sighed, annoyed. "Janette, don't be dramatic. Your sister's wedding came first. You'll understand one day." There it was. The rule of my entire childhood spoken out loud. Rachel comes first. You come last. A cold, thick anger filled my chest, slow and heavy, like concrete. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. But inside me, something cracked open. Something that would change everything. Because by the end of the week, I would uncover something even worse. That night, I drove home to confront them face to face. The drive felt endless. The warm Carolina air buzzed outside my open window. My hands were shaking around the steering wheel. Not with fear. With clarity. I walked into the house and found them at the dining table, papers spread everywhere. Budget sheets. Contracts. Receipts. They looked up like I'd interrupted a board meeting. My dad said, "Oh good, you're here. Sit. We need to talk about next steps." Next steps. Like I was some employee whose schedule needed adjusting. I sat down, staring at the mountain of papers, and something in me shifted. This wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just betrayal. It was logistical, financial, official. So I leaned forward and calmly said, "Show me the numbers." My mother blinked. "What?" "I want to see exactly what you spent. And what's left." Her lips tightened. "That's not necessary." "Show me," I repeated. My dad exhaled loudly, annoyed, but he slid a folder toward me. I flipped it open. And that's when I saw the truth. My college fund, built on birthday checks, part-time jobs, scholarships, and a small inheritance from my grandmother, hadn't just been borrowed. It was zeroed out. Not low. Not drained. Zero. Every penny had gone to the wedding. The venue. The catering. The designer dress. The videographer. The champagne tower. The fireworks, yes, fireworks. My parents had chosen a 15-minute firework display over my education. My hands shook as I kept flipping. Then I found something even worse. A check written from my fund, made out directly to Rachel. For emergency pre-wedding expenses. $10,000. I whispered, she knew. My voice trembled. My mother said nothing. My father finally muttered, "She was stressed. We helped her." I stared at them. "You gave her my future to ease her stress?" They didn't answer. And that's when the real betrayal walked through the door. Rachel walked in holding leftover wedding cake in a bakery box. She froze when she saw me and the papers. "Oh," she said, smoothing her hair, "so, you know." Her tone was flat. Almost bored. Like I was late to a conversation she'd already finished. I stood up slowly. "How could you let them use my fund?" She shrugged. "Relax, Janette. You'll figure something out. You always do." My mother nodded like that was some kind of compliment. I felt dizzy. "You knew this was my only chance to go this year." Rachel rolled her eyes. "I'm getting married once. You have your whole life to go to college." My father cut in, "Enough. This isn't productive. We made a family decision." I turned to him. "A decision that didn't include me." He shrugged. "You're always so emotional." Emotional. The word pulsed in my ears. Rachel added, "Honestly, Janette, it's not a big deal. You're acting like we stole from you." I stared at her, in her perfect silk blouse, with her perfect manicure, holding the cake from her perfect wedding, and something inside me snapped into place. Not broken. Aligned. I realized in that moment that my family didn't just forget me, they expected me to accept being forgotten. And I wasn't going to accept it anymore. I turned to leave. My mother called after me, "Where are you going?" I said, quietly. "To build a life where I don't get treated like the extra child." I walked out and didn't look back. But the revenge? The justice? That came later. Much later. And it was quiet. Precise. Unavoidable. The next morning, I sat in my car outside a coffee shop in downtown Raleigh. Sun glaring through the windshield. My acceptance forms in my lap. My parents' voices still ringing in my ears. I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides. But then, in that quiet morning light, something changed. I heard my mother's voice from the night before, her exact words. "Don't be dramatic." And then Rachel's smirk. "Relax, Janette. You'll figure something out." And then my father's dismissive shake of his head. You're always so emotional. Those lines circled my brain like vultures. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to them, trying to earn basic respect. But sitting there, with the smell of ground coffee drifting through the open window, a realization hit me so hard I almost laughed. I didn't need their validation. I needed my life back. This was the turning point, one of those moments the older version of yourself later points at and says, right there. That's where everything shifted. I whispered to myself, no more pleading. And I meant it. I wasn't going to beg for the money they stole. I wasn't going to argue with people who thought my dreams were negotiable. I wasn't going to be the quiet, steady one anymore. I was going to be methodical. Deliberate. Unshakable. But revenge, real revenge, takes planning. And mine started that same day, with a single email. I realized in that moment that the only person left to save me was me. I emailed the financial aid office at UNC Greensboro. I explained everything, not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. They responded the same afternoon asking me to come in. By the next morning, I was sitting across from Miss Campbell, a financial aid counselor with warm eyes and a sharper mind than anyone I'd ever met. She listened. Really listened. Then she pulled up my file and said, Janette, you qualify for emergency independent status. I blinked. What does that mean? It means, she said gently, that if a student can prove that their parents are unwilling or unable to support their education, the university can treat them as financially independent, and offer aid accordingly. Independent. That word tasted like freedom. Ms. Campbell guided me through every step. Forms, statements, documentation. I brought in the receipts from the wedding fund. Emails from my parents. Everything. Within a week, I was granted independent status. Within 2 weeks, I had enough grants, aid, and work-study to enroll that fall without my parents' involvement at all. And here's where the revenge began, not loud, not explosive, but legally, administratively, beautifully clean. I removed my parents' access from every school portal, financial link, and account connected to me. They got no emails. No bills. No updates. No power. I was officially, financially, academically not theirs anymore. The real reckoning came 2 months later. Rachel invited the whole family, including me, to her post-wedding brunch celebration. I went. Not to make up. Not to forgive. But because sometimes the best revenge is letting people see what they lost. The brunch was at a fancy rooftop restaurant in Raleigh. White linens. String lights. A view of the skyline. Rachel wore a sparkly dress and a smug smile. My parents looked rested, proud, glowing in the afterglow of the wedding they'd burned my future for. When they saw me, my mom frowned. We didn't know you could afford to come. I smiled. You'd be surprised what I can afford now. They stared, confused. We sat. Mimosas came. Small talk dripped around the table like syrup. Then Rachel asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. So, Janette, what are you doing these days? Taking a little gap year? I took a slow sip of water. Oh. Didn't you hear? I said lightly. I started college last month. The entire table froze. My dad blinked. What? My mom's voice sharpened. How? We told you we couldn't support. I cut her off gently. I know. That's why I filed as an independent student. I'm handling everything on my own now. Silence. Then my aunt, a woman who always saw everything, smiled into her champagne like she'd been waiting for this moment. Rachel's face fell. What do you mean independent? You can't just. I can, I said. And I did. The university approved it. My father's eyes narrowed. You told them we refused to support you? I met his stare without blinking. You didn't support me. My mom sputtered, we did what we had to do for your sister's big day. And I did what I had to do for my future. My aunt whispered, good for you, sweetheart. Rachel folded her arms, her voice sharp. You're making us look bad. I shrugged. No. You're just seeing it clearly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was devastating. For the first time in their lives, they saw me as someone who had slipped out of their control. A woman with her own path. Her own means. Her own boundaries. And the best part. The bill for brunch arrived. The waiter looked around. Rachel reached for her purse. But the waiter shook his head. Oh, someone already handled it. Everyone turned to look at me. I smiled. A little celebration, I said. For my new beginning. After that brunch, things shifted permanently. My parents called less. Rachel texted even less than that. Their guilt, their embarrassment, their confusion, it all built a wall between us. But for once, that wall didn't scare me. Because I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the daughter they couldn't control. The daughter they underestimated. The daughter who rebuilt her life without them. I finished my first semester with straight A's. I worked part-time at the library. I found friends who treated me like I mattered. I found mentors who saw potential in me, not just convenience. I built myself from the ground up. And every time I passed the bulletin board at school showcasing student achievements, I saw my name there, for scholarships, awards, research programs, and I felt something warm and steady inside me. Pride. The kind no one could take away. Halfway through the year, my parents finally called. My dad spoke first. Maybe we overstepped. It wasn't an apology. But it was the closest I'd ever get. My mother took the phone and said, we want you to come home for Easter. I closed my eyes. I appreciate it, I said. But I'm staying here. I have finals. She sighed. You're still angry. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. I'm not angry anymore, I said softly. I'm just done living last. That sentence hung in the air like a curtain closing on a long, painful play. She didn't know what to say. So I said it for her. I hope you're doing well. But I'm focusing on me now. And I meant it. By sophomore year, I'd earned enough academic scholarships that I didn't need loans at all. I became a resident advisor. I joined a research team. I started tutoring first-generation students who came from homes like mine, homes where the rules were written to keep one kid shining and the other one dim. I told them the same thing Ms. Campbell once told me. You're allowed to save yourself. My parents eventually tried to rebuild a relationship, little by little. Not because they had changed, but because they finally understood something. Losing access to me was the real cost of what they'd done. Rachel, on the other hand, stayed distant. Her marriage hit rough patches. Her job became stressful. And she often called my mother crying. I never gloated. I never celebrated her misery. Because that's not who I am. My revenge wasn't ruining their lives. It was reclaiming mine. It was showing them, and myself, that I didn't need to be the forgotten daughter. I could be the architect of my own life. And maybe that's why, years later, when my parents apologized for real tears, regret, everything, I listened. I didn't excuse them. I didn't forget. But I forgave. Not for them. For me. If there's one thing I learned, it's this. Family can fail you. But your future doesn't have to. Sometimes the people who should protect your dreams are the ones who casually trade them away. And when that happens, you're allowed, truly allowed, to build your life without asking their permission. If my story resonates with you, share it, comment your thoughts, and tell me if you've ever had to rebuild yourself when the people closest to you let you down. And if you made it to the end. Thank you. You're the reason I tell these stories.